Welcome again to the Revenue Throughput Podcast. This is Jose Palomino, your host. And our guest today is a CEO, owner, operator of a really fascinating company. He's Curt Snyder, CEO of Lancaster Products based in Lebanon, PA. And they are a solutions company dedicated to improving material mixing and processing. They design and build complete mixing, palletizing, and crushing systems for a wide range of industries and different materials and applications. Now, I've known Curt for years, and I've seen firsthand how he's applied some best practices and principles to grow and thrive in a number of highly competitive markets. Well, let's welcome Curt Snyder to the Revenue Throughput Podcast. Hi, Curt. Glad to have you here.
Thanks for having me, Jose. I appreciate it.
Yeah, so Curt, in my introduction, I mentioned how I just focus on one business right now, the Lancaster Products, that I've certainly grew to know you best through initially, and just a brief background, how you came to become the owner of Lancaster Product. What drew you into the world of heavy industrial manufacturing?
I had been working in mergers and acquisitions for probably close to 15 years prior. Part of that was in aerospace. So, it's fairly, complex, highly engineered, heavy manufacturing type of product. So, I had been traveling the world, making acquisitions, and, I had a young family, and quite frankly, I was tired of being away so much. So when the opportunity presented itself, I was able to go out on my own, and I found Lancaster Products, and Lancaster Products seemed to be a really interesting, heavier manufacturing company with proprietary products, and they had some really interesting technology. So the owner was ready to retire, so I was able to step in and take it over about 5 years ago.
Wow, wow. So that was a shift from looking at the strategic, the balance sheet, P&L, and now like whether something was worth acquiring, investing in, and so on, and then shifting into now you're in the driver's seat. You're actually running the business. So who is your typical, if there is such a thing, your typical or your ideal customer for Lancaster Products?
Well, I think we look at two types of customers. First, they have to have a some sort of powder or slurry that needs to get mixed. But aside from that, I think that there's really two types of profiles that we look for within that category. And we're sort of material agnostic. We do everything from, ash to ceramics to organic materials, for fertilizers and that sort of thing. So, we have a bunch of different industries and materials that we can utilize, but the one common denominator is that they're all powdered or slurry materials that need to be mixed or pelletized. But within that category, we look for two types of customers. One, that has a need for beneficial reuse. So, either transforming their waste streams into another product or reintroducing their waste streams into the production stream again. So we're able to, densify, mix, combine it with something else, and, make either a new product from it, that's no longer a cost to dispose of, but now it's an additional revenue stream, or we're able to help recover product that would otherwise just be landfilled because it's unworkable. So we're able to bring it back to the normal production stream. And then the second type of customer is like using normal materials or virgin materials. And, we look for where the value added of our process in our mixers can increase the value significantly. So high value add from raw material to end product. So it's more than 1 + 1 + 1 = 3. It's, the combination of all three allow, for in a proprietary mix allow for much higher returns on than you would get if you were just selling the individual components. So that's the two types of customers we look for.
So in the first example you gave, you know, reintroducing materials into production process and so on, you're literally taking waste and turning it into cash,
Yes. Yeah.
essentially. And in
Mhm.
the second example, you know, somebody might have already been doing something with their materials, but you found a way to actually maybe allow them to get more out of their markets than they otherwise would without using your process.
Right, that's right. Yeah. So, we're able to, increase the efficiency of their production process. So, especially with high value materials, every little bit is significant incremental profit. So, we're able to do that in a much more efficient manner than, most other machines in the same category.
Okay, now when you acquired the firm, some of these like core technologies that you're referring to here, like the ability to do these special processes and so on, were they already in the company?
Yes, they were. They had been developed by the previous owner and the previous generation of engineers that had worked for them. But they didn't really commercialize it all that well. They had one very large customer, high tech, that essentially was nearly the entire business, and they really catered to it. But when I looked at it, I thought to myself, well, if this high performance, you know high demanding customer likes our mixer, and we're sole source with them for a very difficult product to make, then we really have something here that we can expand it to other industries and other customers that have similar or even lesser demands. So I saw it as a very high barrier to entry, um, with our capability being able to get us through that door.
Now, what I love about that story, for especially for our listeners who are also, you know, basically owner operators in that anywhere from $5 to $50 million size companies, is the fact that you took something that was already there, and this is something we always like to emphasize with people, is like a lot of the treasures are already in your business. You're just maybe not leveraging them. You're not
Yeah.
bringing them to the surface. You're not really letting people know about it
Right.
even. So it seems like that was a big part of your focus, was to say who else could benefit from this thing that this very demanding technical company thinks is great, then other people are going to think it's great too.
Yeah.
And you broke through that customer concentration hurdle, which is, you know, could be death for a small company.
Hmm.
Wow.
Absolutely.
So, you know, as you look at, and you've been experiencing this growth, and you've taken over this operation over the last 5 years and found these other opportunities. What would you say were some of the challenges you face? I mean, you had this vision probably from the day you acquired it. You saw the potential, but getting there is something else, right? Everybody has a great roadmap. Driving the distance is something else, especially when there's boulders and lava pits along the way. So, you know,
Yeah.
what were some of the big challenges you faced, you think, if you look back over the last 5 years to grow your business?
I mean, essentially, I was taking a sleepy, no growth or flat growth company, and really sort of turbocharging it. So, I mean, there really wasn't a formalized sales organization or marketing. Their marketing, um, was nearly non-existent. I mean, it was focused on just product features, not capability or what you can do with it. So, it was sort of a little misguided in that approach. Um, Product design, I mean, even while the basic technology was there, really hadn't been updated in any sort of meaningful way in probably 15 years. So, I had to bring on a new engineering team to be able to take a look at the existing um, drawings and work with our manufacturing floor to be able to improve and modernize a bunch of different features on the mixer. I mean, the basic technology is still the same, but it's the overall mixer is way more enhanced with more modern technology that didn't exist, 15 or 20 years ago. Operations wise, I mean, it was sort of, not lean at all. It was, just very old school manufacturing. We introduced lean to the overall program that we had there, more accountability, inventory cleanup, that sort of thing. And, so in almost every area of the company, you had to require improvement or bringing it into, modern times because, they just had, um, stopped moving forward, several years ago, and we're just either sustaining or even regressing in a lot of areas. So, and from a cultural standpoint, it was a shock to the company. And, some people really took to it because they knew they wanted change and they were, they had many years ahead of them at the company. And, they really became champions for it. So I was lucky that I had, that internal um, support that allowed me to move the whole company forward.
So what's interesting about that, Curt, is so you take over the company, it's been around for decades, and you take over the company 5 years ago. So in a sense, you came in with a fresh set of eyes, right? So a lot of people listening to this podcast may say, well, I've been running my business for 20 years. We're doing okay. How would you maybe advise them to, how do you get fresh set of eyes? I mean, everything was new to you because you were just walking into a company that already existed. But imagine somebody who's been in a company 20 years, they still have to do the same thing you did. But it's really hard sometimes to do that. So, is there like a word of wisdom to that owner who's maybe hasn't really done that top to bottom review that you did because you were coming in as the new owner? What would you say to them?
I mean, I would say think about it as if you were starting over with nothing. How would you structure the business? Knowing what you know today, how would you structure the business? Who would you hire? Um, how would you lead it? And I know that there's a lot of legacy issues with companies, and there's people, process, and technology issues. But forgetting all about that and just thinking about your product and your customer. Um, if you could start all over, if there was a time machine or a way to just take away everything that was existing and you had to rebuild the company from scratch, what would you do? And I mean, you know your current company would probably look very differently. Your new company would probably look very different than your current company, I would imagine. So I think that's the mindset to go into it, and then actually implementing the change is a whole different story. But that's the way I would think about it.
So really kind of allowing yourself to think of the clean sheet of paper if you could. Because a lot of people get stuck on, well, yeah, but we can't do that, and I have these people here, and I have these commitments, and so on. But you're really saying, like, at least on paper, challenge yourself to think about what's possible.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, obviously, you have to honor your commitments and, your current company, the way that it's built. But, if you could reimagine what your company would look like if you had to start over again, I think that's a good place to start. At least you can identify areas where you think that you need to improve or would want to change things. Then that's part of the battle. Just identifying what's possible and what you think would work better.
And without going into particular details, did you find that there were some changes you saw as necessary that were implemented much more quickly than you expected, and others that took a lot longer than you expected? I mean, were you surprised by the rate of change in some areas?
Um, I wasn't surprised with it. I mean, I know, sometimes I try to change things and it wasn't working. And I sort of said, okay, well, let me uh, retrench and um, try something else. Cause obviously this is too much, too quickly, even though I knew it was the right way to head in the right direction and it would get me to the outcome a lot quicker. I knew that, with the company culture and the people, they just could not um, make those changes that quickly. And, I don't want to risk the current business. So, you have to be careful, right? So you have to make sure that, you really can't start over because you have current customers and you have, commitments that you need to, honor. So, you have to think about, okay, what's the best approach? All right, this is not working. I know this is the right way to go, but, let me try something else, or let me introduce this more slowly, or let me introduce something else to help me, get further along the journey. So then when the next time when I introduce this concept, I can make it successful.
Okay. So yeah, so there's it's kind of like, what is it? The doctors, the Hippocratic Oath: first, do no harm, right? So you don't want to blow up your current revenue stream, yet you don't want to not move forward. So
Right.
it's kind of that tension there.
Mhm.
Well, looking at moving forward, and again, I know you don't have a particular crystal ball that other people don't have, but you have opinions and you're out there in the market. What do you see as, from a business owner perspective, showing up on the horizon as maybe the biggest challenge over the next couple of years for anybody in your position, owning a business in, let's say, whether it's in industrial categories or what have you, but just what do you see as the biggest challenge if we look out over the next, from here to, 2025? What strikes you as being something people should be thinking about?
I mean, I think number one challenge is probably scaling for growth. I mean, I think the demand for good employees is increasing. So you're obviously, you got to be careful about who you bring on, and make sure that they're aligned with your goals, and they're able to assimilate with the company culture. So I think the challenge is, I mean, hopefully after we come out of this pandemic, we'll see a lot of growth, and it's sort of rebounding from what I consider a pretty low point. So just scaling and being able to grow the business to match pent up demand and hopefully future demand. So I think that's really probably over the next 4 to 5 years is probably what I'm most focused on. And I think that a lot of people in my situation should be focused on as well.
Well, that's actually an optimistic challenge to look forward to, right? That there's going to be this demand and that you need to be ready to meet it. And probably the other side of that is also timing, right? So it's you can't just scale up and also grow your infrastructure until the demand is there, but you can't wait till the demand is fully there to decide to scale up. So it's an interesting dance that you have to do.
Yeah. I mean, you have to believe you're going to grow. I mean, otherwise, if you don't believe that you have the ability to grow, I mean, even, if you have to, change your path like slightly, if you don't have that belief, then, it's not going to happen. I mean, sometimes growth happens by accident, but most of the time it happens by design, so, you have to build the company to be able to grow, and you have to be able to, at each level, you have to be able to support your customers and support, your existing employees. And so it's sort of, I know it's a chicken or the egg type problem, but it's really like one built on the other. So, you have to be able to, have that design in your head and then start implementing it. And then, you know, um, but I think in this case where, we're going from an all-time low to, potentially an all-time high, in a very short period of time. I mean, basically, at least my businesses are condensing, maybe 2 years of, of sales into one. So, it's like you have to really think about how do I, scale, but also scale for, long-term growth as well, not just tomorrow, but, what would make sense from an organizational design and, and needs for my team to be able to, achieve these growth rates and, not just for next year or the year after, but, for the next 5 years, so, and you have to have that plan in place, how you're going to hire and, where you need to, and, obviously, as things progress, I mean, you have to be flexible to be able to change or adapt, but, at least you have to start with that concept and that belief. So,
Yeah, well, I love two things. I mean, everything you said, it just I think it was on point there, Kurt. But two things in particular. Use the phrase "growth by design." So I love that idea. And everything that represents, right? So it's yes, there's certain things you do need breaks along the way sometimes, and sometimes headwinds can slow you down and so on. Those are things that we can't control. But whatever we can control, we can control by being intentional about it. And then the kind of the big thought behind that, which I really appreciated, was you got to believe it. Like if you don't believe it, if you don't even believe it as the owner, then no one else is going to believe it more than you. So
Yeah.
no one's going to believe it for you. So I think that's a great word of wisdom here for our listeners here from Curt Snyder. And with that, Curt, I just want to thank you again for taking the time for this interview. I think you've shared a lot of really great insights that our listeners will really appreciate. And if people wanted to learn more about your business, where should they go?
They can go to lancasterproducts.com. I mean, that's our main webpage. And we're on social media. We're on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter. So, any of the social media outlets you can use to find us as well.
Yeah, and we'll include those links in our show notes for those who pick up our podcast that way. And Curt, once again, thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Okay. Thanks, Jose. I appreciate it.